welcome to another session of the Naiccon panels. Today we are discussing the eSports Organizers panel, and we have with us Dennis Whiter from PSG, that's Pro Series Gaming. We have Len Neri from Rage, and we have Sadiq Bakayako. I hope I'm saying that right.
Bakayako.
Maybe you can introduce yourselves and just tell us a brief history about just your gaming organization, what you do, and how it has been, how it is, and where are you going from there?
Hi everyone. Yeah, so my name is Len. I've been in the gaming scene since 1998. It started as a media organization where we wrote about the latest games and both hardware, software required for those games. So it was a gaming publication that we started in South Africa. From that, the events side of it was a natural progression. So in 2000, we hosted our first World Cyber Games qualifying event called Warfare. And that then led into us picking up the license for the Electronic Sports World Cup. And so it's been growing, and we now are in our 18th year of us running our large-scale events. It's called Rage, which is an acronym for Really Awesome Gaming Event. Funny, we just came to that name because we were in a meeting and we just said to the sponsor, we just want to have a really awesome gaming event. And so here we are. And we attract about 40,000 visitors over 3 days at our event. And but we still retain the media side of it. So we've got the media publication and the events.
Just mention my name. My name is Dennis Whiter. I'm the team leader of PSG. PSG is basically Pro Series Gaming Info. It's an esports brand in Kenya. We're really hoping to spread the esports spirit across Africa. We officially started in 2017, but we've been in the market way before that, courtesy of a brand called Naiccon. You guys know Naiccon, the city of Naiccon. In 2017 is when we went official, meaning we did our homework, tried to find out what's going on in the landscape. We found out that Africa TV has a very young demographic. On average, you find like Africa is about 25 years on average, so everyone's spread out. And you find that there's a lot of transitions in the career, so people are picking up new careers, influencership is becoming a thing, people are becoming disc jockeys and they're putting bread on the table, food on the table. So why not be bring esports and competitive gaming into the scene? That's how it was started. So we majorly focus on live events, online tournaments, creating content, and we broadcast that. We also do a little bit of LAN parties here and there, just trying to get the community going, as well as we have our merchandising store running.
So my name is Sadiq Bakayako. I'm the founder and CEO of Paradise Game. And basically Paradise Game was founded officially in 2017. And the idea was really, how can we help transform the video game industry, first in Côte d'Ivoire and everywhere we can. We started first with events. One of our main events, the one that's well known, is called FEJA. And the idea with FEJA was really, how can we put together a lot of those esports fans, video game fans, and help them spend some quality time together, and in a sense create a wave that will spread across in West Africa and beyond, with the idea that, okay, esports and video game is possible in Africa. Let's look at what we can do. We're happy. The first year, I think we had about 6 countries attending. The second year, 10, and the third year, 13 countries. Beyond that, we have a lot of small size events that we do here and there. The second aspect that we work on is gaming centers. We have, for example, one gaming center that's about 1,400 square meters. Same with the idea of making sure that people who are interested in video games have a space where they can play, a place where they can meet and connect, and also a place where we can host big size events. So that's where we host the FEJA and a lot of those other tournaments, and where we do streaming, etc. The third side of our business is creating content. So on the multimedia aspect of things, we have a TV show on video games that hosts every week on national TV. We have also a lot of content that we're starting to create now towards more internet, Twitch, and a lot of those online platforms. And I'll say the fourth aspect of things, which is the last one, is actually helping and supporting game developers in Africa. So we have an event, we have a space that we call the Africa Corner, where basically every time there's a major event, Gamescom, Party Games Week, we try to have a stand and have game developers from Africa. I think last year we had about 13 studios coming from different, from North Africa, South Africa, East and West. And the idea is really, how can we show that Africa has potential and to show that it is possible to do things. So in a nutshell, that's who Paradise Game is. And we really hope that, we can entertain, educate, and empower young Africans towards esports and video games and edtech.
Maybe Dennis, you can tell us why decide to, start a business in esports? Why esports?
When I was very young, I always wanted to do something around the video gaming space. It was very absurd when someone told you, you can play video games, but when you turn 18, you have to go find a job. You hone a skill, you become very good at it, and then after that, you just throw it out the window. For me, that didn't make sense. So living in Kenya also forced me to go into places where I had to do things that I didn't like. Penny said she went to school, studied aeronautical engineering. That's not what she's practicing. And I think it's something that's very common here in Africa and in Kenya. You find a lot of people doing things that they didn't study in school. So for me, it was just to break away from the normal, find something that you're comfortable with, and saying, since we have a very young demographic in Africa and they're very interested in electronic sports, how do you bring that closer? So that sparked up the birth of PSG, that sparked the need to have an esports company just running all across Africa. The next thing was, I know esports is taking shape in Africa. It's also taking shape in the globe. But unfortunately, in Africa, we find ourselves in a situation where we're not able to export our talent. So we find people who want to take part in international esports events, but they're not able to travel either because of cost restraints, the infrastructure itself. So instead of trying to take the donkey to the river, we try to bring the river to the donkey. That's how it started, and that's the reason why we're doing it.
Len, can you hear me? Yeah, I just wanted to know, from your perspective, why did you choose esports?
Back in 1998, the term esports wasn't a thing. It's kind of came to us because I wanted to do something completely different. I was actually studying to become a veterinarian, so completely different to this. And a friend of mine opened up an internet cafe and said, "Hey, there's a need for a magazine that talks about the latest hardware and software, and so there's a gap in the market for gaming." And I laughed at him and I said, "There's no ways it's going to happen." So if it wasn't for my friend, it wouldn't have happened. And so here we are today. But it's not something that I thought about doing. I mean, I've played games, sure, but gaming back then is different to what you guys experienced growing up, So PlayStation, I remember when the first talk of PlayStation was abound, and Gran Turismo was this brand new game that no one had heard about, and they spoke about the technology of putting this game together and putting cameras around the track as they put a Toyota Supra around the corner, and that was amazing. It was something that had never been done before. So I guess I'm fortunate in that it came almost accidentally, and then it was a natural progression. The name Gamescom was mentioned early on, and we were around before Gamescom was around. So for us, we would go to events like Computex, where that event is focused on hardware, where Gigabyte and Asus and all these companies will showcase their latest products, and it was and we always used to go to Gamescom, and of course when E3 started, every year we'd go to E3, and both E3 and Gamescom would always talk about the need for them to be able to directly interact with end users.
For you, Siddiq, why esports for you?
No, I think it's I think it all started, I would say way back then. I don't know, I was probably 5 or 6 when I was playing on my first, I think it was a Commodore back in the days. I could still remember, the stars in my eyes when looking at I think it was it's funny Len mentioned Gran Turismo. I think it was a racing game. I think it was a Lotus Turbo Challenge at the time. I still remember that, I don't know, 30 something years afterwards. And I think, since then, it's stuck here, the fact that, okay, this thing is going to stay in my life for a long time. So, you fast forward a few years later, played a lot in high school, but not at a competitive level, because at that time, esports wasn't really the thing. People were just playing out of fun. You were playing on your console at your house, and then I think the internet was starting to boom, so you could connect with people and share insights and share what was happening. So I think, working for a few years in the telecom industry, now, one day you decide, okay, you know what, that's it. I want to go and start my own thing. And you're trying to figure out how to put together something that you love doing with something that could make sense and something that has a future. And then you're like, hey, I don't want to work anymore. I want to have fun when I'm working. So why don't do video games? And then I think, one thing led to the other. We started this. And why esports? Honestly, it was just because we felt it was a great way to connect with people. Because once you're trying to, the big objective for us is really how can we make sure that we touch as many young people as possible? Like, for example, for the next 5 years, we really want to touch about 200 million Africans. So we looked at everything around video games and we're like, okay, there's different things that we could do. Esports is definitely that one thing that will attract attention from the youth, that will get them to connect, that will show them the fact that, okay, you know what, if I play and I focus on it, maybe tomorrow I could become a professional player, and it will drive their attention. And once you have their attention, then you can start talking to them about the fact that, okay, you know what, even if you don't become an esports player, you could also develop a game.
Thank you, Dick. We're organizing a tournament, an R6 tournament that's dubbed the Siege Showdown. Len, can you tell us, what are the difficulties or what are the challenges that come in running a tournament or organizing a tournament?
For us, we don't really see, apart from let's remove the money side of it, because obviously sponsorships is the big thing. That is the first hurdle that one needs to cross, and ultimately, if we don't have the sponsor backing that, well, you don't attempt it, because you're just going to lose money, and then that's it. But let's remove the money side of it for a second. The biggest problem from an online perspective is the connectivity. In Africa, it's not the best thing that compared to the rest of the world. We certainly have a lot of people that don't have access to cheap and viable internet solution. It is changing in South Africa. We are seeing more and more fiber connections, and the pricing is coming down, and there's a lot of talk about the cost of data coming down, but it really needs to drop even more before it really will start touching the amount of people that esports should be touching. So that's the next big hurdle for me. And then the other is access to equipment that will allow everybody to compete. If you look at a PlayStation or an Xbox, or God forbid a computer, there's not a lot of people in Africa that can afford that. Certainly mobile gaming is becoming more and more of a thing, and that's great. And I think for Africa, mobile gaming should be the focus, and how that plugs into the rest of the world, not 100% sure. I think the rest of the world, I had a conversation with an old school esports gamer. His nickname is Fatality, Jonathan Wendell, and we actually brought him to South Africa a couple of years ago. I think it was in 2006 or whatever. And I still talk to the guy from time to time. Very, very nice guy, and arguably the world's best gamer for many, many years in a row. But they kind of view mobile gaming, and I'm not putting consoles into the mobile space or notebooks into that space, but they kind of view international community kind of view mobile gaming as the entry level, the you know, those guys, you know, and that's sad, you know, especially from an African perspective. You know, we don't have nowhere near the amount of resources to general public that there should be. So so that's the third hurdle. And with you know, if you get past that, and you have a sponsor that will go and deliver a mobile or a PC or a whatever to each of the contestants to compete online, well, then you've got no problems at all. So managing a tournament, the software thereof, you know, that's easy peasy. Streaming that is not a problem. Obviously, there are a bunch of games that present its problems and have restrictions. I remember when eSports had a massive restriction on the ability to stream their games, and you know, but we always found a way to overcome that, whether that be how's this for an example, and I hope no one sues me for this, but we hosted I think it was in 2016 or somewhere around there. We hosted a FIFA tournament, and one of the local soccer teams got involved, Kaiser Chiefs, and they brought some of their real players there, and people could meet them, and it was just phenomenal. But eSports prohibited us from streaming that event online for people to watch. So we couldn't connect a live or connect a cable to the units and then stream it directly. But what we are allowed to do, that little loophole, was have a mobile phone pointed at the big screen, and we streamed that to Facebook Live, and you know, that was amazing, and we got 73,000 views or something like that on that live stream on the semi-final and final game. So there's definitely an appetite for that, and you know, so. But anyway, so in terms of difficulties, you'll from a stream perspective, you'll always find some sort of way to overcome that. But unfortunately, like I said, from an Africa perspective, there are three very serious hurdles. And then from a live event perspective, I'm going to include the first three hurdles into the live events, but not live stream, the live event perspective. But then, of course, the costs are a lot more. I mean, if I had to look at the cost of hosting an online event versus a real event, an online event is 10% of a real event. So just broad speaking. So if I had to put an event together for 10 million Rand, it'll be a massive event, and it'll be a good success. But there's no way that a virtual event will cost me that, or an online event will cost me that. It's about 10%. So yeah, the costs ramp up quite dramatically, but then gamers don't want gamers to bring their own equipment in. So now you need a hardware sponsor. You know, we've tried in the past to have events in the early days where people brought their own computers to host a tournament, a Counter-Strike tournament or a Quake tournament or whatever it was back in those days, and it was always a negative because you know, people had different graphic cards, and therefore different. If you have a different computer, you can to your opponent, you can always point towards the devices being giving another person an unfair advantage. So we had to remove that, and the only way to do that is by having sponsored. And you know, since 2008, when the world economy, or 2009, when the world economy took that massive hit, it's becoming tougher and tougher for companies or to get big computers from these companies. So, and then of course the venue size. You know, people don't realize how much space an eSports staging and a spectator area takes. Before you know it, you're on 1,000 square meters, excluding your broadcast space, and if you're going to have jibs and all that type of stuff on. Yeah, I'm talking about a decent, like an ESL or a World Cup Games event. You need a good grandstand seating and a decent stage, and yeah, 1,000 square meters in any venue is not cheap. So So those are my obstacles.
Your challenges. I'm sure Dennis can jump into this, seeing that PSG is very young at this, and I'm sure we're experiencing as much as, what Len mentioned at the beginning. Maybe you can give some input into this.
Right, as I was going to say, in terms of what Len was saying, the gray hair is really wisdom. Most of everything Len is talking about is really spot on in regards to what you're experiencing. And I think one of the things that is really killing us here in Kenya is the perception, So you tell someone you're hosting an esports tournament, you're hosting an esports event, it's probably you're talking to a young person. So they need to go back, get their parents or their guardians to approve it. But there's a really negative perception when it comes to gaming. Either you're a baby, you're doing things that are, related to being a child. It's nothing that's ever going to put bread or meals on your table. So people don't really take it that seriously here. Even as funny as the people who are in the space right now. So tournaments were there before esports came into the market. Tournaments were there. People were just hosting unofficial, informal tournaments. 3 or 4 friends come together and do it. But when you tell those people you're hosting a tournament or an esports tournament that has this kind of prize pool, for them, they'll be like, this is not my thing. I'm not going to do this. So that's a big blow to us esports organizers. So we need to change that perception, get people on board the bandwagon, if I may call it so. Another thing that Len has talked about is the infrastructure. So generally, if you're doing an online, offline kind of event, the infrastructure is a big contributor to some of the problems we're facing. So one thing being the servers, the location of the servers. Funny enough, we just got off a call. We were talking about the different ping milliseconds you're getting from the different parts of Africa, West, East, and South, North, and North Africa as well. So you'll find maybe you have a Pan-African tournament taking place. People in West Africa have a better ping than people in East Africa. What's going to happen in that particular situation? So the infrastructure is key, not just the location of the servers, as well as the power, the internet connectivity. I think we concluded FIFA Fan Fest, which was one of our FIFA tournaments that we're running online. And one of the things that really slowed us down was power. Your opponent is online, he's waiting for you, but the other opponent has no connectivity, has no power. What do? They just get disqualified. And that brings back some friction between the eSport organizers and gamers, the professional gamers themselves. So some of the critical things that we're looking at, we need to push as a whole just to get the conversation out there. One
of the things that maybe I can contribute in addition is probably access to those big brands, like, those big licenses. Because when you talk about esports, from one perspective, you're trying to promote and develop the community that's following and that's playing a game. So in a sense, you're helping those brands develop the kind of community that they have. You're increasing the number of people that may eventually buy those games. But then in certain cases, brands may ask you to pay for a license before you can use their game in a tournament.
I actually did try and do a little thing with Kenya. I had signed up a very good sponsorship with Vodacom, and Vodacom had a local company or a sister company, because it's not called Vodacom in Kenya. There's something else.
Safaricom.
Safaricom. Okay, yes, that's it. So we were trying to collaborate under the money that we got from Vodacom to try and help gaming in Kenya or esports in Kenya, and then Vodacom to pay for the winners to come to South Africa. So we did try.
Len, you mentioned about the struggles about running a tournament, and so did Siddiq and so did Dennis. And we all have common ground. And the first thing that all of you mentioned was the sponsorship, the brands. So how do you get a brand to come on board for esports? Because we've had the situation where, the same guy who is holding the money and the budget is the same guy telling his child, I hope you're not playing that video game. You better go and study, leave that video game alone.
It's what we were just discussing a few minutes ago. It's you have to get into the mud, whether it's international brands, local brands, you have to get into the mud and you have to show them that there's something here. Because for now, they really don't see it. You're here, you're telling them this, you're playing with the team, they don't really play with the team. They don't even understand what the sport is. So how do you get them to see that? So there's a lot of sensitization that needs to go into that. So a lot of B2B marketing, get them to see what it is that you're selling, whether it's experiential, whether it's just immersing them in just a small experience as well. You need to do that to get the brands involved in the conversation, as well as the brands are looking for the numbers. The brands are looking for the audience. So we need also to build our audience to that place where we have, millions of people watching, because that's the only thing they're looking for. Assuming PSG is just there, we're not even straightforward. We're not sure what it is that we want to do. We're not placing ourselves in the market as a brand. Why else would Safaricom want to work with us? Why would any other brand want to work with us? So if you're able to package yourself as a brand, position yourself in the market correctly, have the right target audience as well. So you're pulling in numbers, whether it's physical, one of our colleagues calls it butts on seats, whether it's that or it's just the viewership online. You need to have that straightforward. And I think that now will make you more attractive to the brands, and they'll be more willing to work with you.
I think you mentioned that, you in your last event, you had over 20,000 people come through. How did you guarantee that, what Dennis is talking about, the butts in seats, that people are actually there?
You can never really guarantee it. I think it's about being, I'll say a bit, I wouldn't use the word crazy, but being very optimistic. and when you start, when I look back in 2017, when we started, I remember the last discussion that we had with our sponsor. We had no other sponsor, but we got on the table and the sponsor told us they weren't sure whether they wanted to come. And in a sense, and basically what I said is, even if you don't come, we'll make it happen. It's going to be a huge success, and it'll be unfortunate because you won't be a part of it. But in the back of my mind, I was like, if they don't come, what do I do? and then I was lucky. I played my card right, and it worked. But ultimately, I think it was because that brand was already looking at esports and video game. Maybe not trying to invest that same year, but was looking at it maybe for the following year, and they were interested in doing something in the space. So I think I was there at the right time with the right arguments, because one of the things that Dennis mentioned as well is making sure you play your cards right with other brands. We had done something with Coca-Cola where it was not really cash that we asked for, but for us the most important thing was to make sure we get associated with the brand as big as Coca-Cola, because that would help us ultimately afterwards when we would discuss with other potential partners or even with Coca-Cola themselves. So I think it's about if you're looking at somebody who's organizing an event, they need to look long-term. They can't look at, okay, how can I find a sponsor that will give me a lot of money and I can make a lot of money today? They need to look at the future, and they need to build up. One, they need to organize events on a regular basis. Two, they need to make sure that they advertise it regularly. Three, they need to reach out to people in other countries, reach out to people who are doing things, do a lot of partnerships, do a lot of things free, because if you do that tomorrow, other people may help you, because that's the way, the word works. And I think, it's a step-by-step process. Today, it's, we're in the 5th year in a sense that we exist officially. And it's because we've done a few things in year 1, year 2, year 3 that today we are where we are. And hopefully in 10 years, we'll continue moving in the right direction. So I think you need to focus, you need to keep doing, you need to execute, you need to do it well, and you need to, to continue talking to the potential partners. Out of 100, maybe there's 5 or 2 that will eventually say yes, but you can't get discouraged for it. You need to continue, pitching and hoping that one accepts to give you their support.
So it's just about knocking on doors, just consistently knocking on doors.
Knocking on doors and being efficient, doing things well. Like when you do an event, you need to make sure that people are happy. If they're not happy, make sure the following year you do better. You improve on every single thing that people tell you that wasn't right. You improve on it, and you try to reach out. You try to look at what other people are doing. You're trying to, promote your event. You're trying to, I think it's about being ambitious, but at the same time, making sure that what you do is well done so that nobody can complain on this or this specific aspect. Okay.
And Falan, you've been there since 1998, Mr. Wisdom. So what wisdom would you give a startup company right now wanting to, starting to talk to a brand? What would they change in their proposal? How is it that they can approach someone or a big brand, like maybe as Siddiq was saying, like Coca-Cola, as Dennis was saying, Safaricom, approaching these big brands and having them entrust you with their brand in order for you to have your event?
Well, firstly, I must say that I love what Sadiq was saying, and my motto has always been under promise, over deliver. And by doing that, eventually it will come back to you. So the last thing that we ever want to do is tell a sponsor that there's going to be 40,000 people coming, or after the event that we had 80,000 people at the event. I know there's event organizers that will say that they had 80,000 people, but what they do is so let's say they sell a weekend pass, for example. They count that weekend pass as let's say it's a 4-day event, times 4. Whether that person has been there once or two of the days, they counted as 4. And that's unfortunately, and press is counted as a visitor, and that's wrong. You know what I mean? So even the guy holding the camera, that's a visitor. That's not on. So yeah, over promising and under delivering is a problem. So that's why again I state I love what Sadiq was saying. In terms of how we found our feet, is the first 5 years of Rage, we lost money year on year, and we just remained believing that it is a thing, believing that eventually it will happen. So consistently delivering a good event, consistently showing that we are growing year on year, and that led to where we are right now until COVID. So everything was fine until COVID. So, but yeah, it's about being real, being consistent, and you said the exact repeat that Dennis said, and that is knocking on those doors, approaching as your big sponsors, the Coca-Colas. It does make a difference having a big brand that you can talk about or tout when you go and see either an opposing brand or another brand that views your headline sponsor in a positive light. But ultimately, don't go in and think that as a startup that there's money in esports off the bat, because no one really has a formula that actually works where esports is a money-making machine. It just isn't right now in Africa. I'm talking about Africa, and unfortunately, that ROI that you kind of have to guarantee or talk about to a prospective sponsor is non-existent, to the point where if I host a stream for a Counter-Strike tournament and the winners are being sent to Stockholm, for example, and I've got, let's call it 40 teams that have entered the event, as soon as a team has been knocked out, they leave. They don't stay in the venue and watch, or connect to the stream and watch. So it's not just non-competitive people that are not supporting the ecosystem that they are a part of, and that's, you talk about grassroots, that's actual grassroots. That's actually where it's at. People that are involved, that have a vested interest in trying to make something out of esports, even they, and I don't know how it is in Kenya and the rest of the world, and but in South Africa, generally the guys care about themselves. They don't care about the team next to them. Sure, there's friendships, 100%, but there needs to be a wake-up call in that if they don't support each other, how in hell do they think that they can have a sponsor provide them with this free event, because you can't even charge them an entrance fee?
Yeah.
You know,
I see Sadiq
because oh God,
in agreement.
you know. Apart from the fact that this all started really from the publishers, right? So the EAs of the world, and I've had arguments with these guys, you know, with their yeah. Anyway, don't get me started on that. But you know, I've had arguments with with publishers where they say to me that you know, I can't charge anybody an entrance fee to play a FIFA tournament, as an example, because then I'm monetizing something that belongs to them. Well, yeah, I wish there was another company that would bring out a game that's better than EA's version of the game, because believe me, I'll drop them like a can of. Yeah. Anyway, so it's just frustrating when you're trying to grow the ecosystem, and then you have so many hurdles thrown at you, and until such time as there's a real formula that works in this country to monetize esports, we very heavily reliant on a sponsor. But even then, you can't guarantee the sponsor the revenue directly from esports. So what works in our country, and maybe that's something that might inspire you guys in your respective territories, is we focus on an expo. Why do I pronounce it so badly? we focus on it being an expo. So we showcase the latest hardware, latest software. So we create an experience for the visitors, and part of that experience happens to be sitting and watching people play competitively. So we'll do drone racing, we'll do coding and robotics and hackathons, and showcase the latest Intel processor, for example, or have robot wars where these robots are beating each other up, or have cosplay, or you know. So there's much more to it than just the esports element.
What are the gaps that you can identify in your region, Sadiq, and how is it you can address that to catch up to the rest of the world? I know we have like a long way to go, but what gap is it that you can, or what gaps are there in your region that you can identify?
Well, one of the things that comes to my mind is audience. I think Dennis mentioned it at some point. What works internationally is the fact that you have streamers who have millions of people behind them. So as soon as they hit the button and they say, I'm at this event, everybody just rushes coming in. And I think, you know, we need to figure out a way to build up that audience so that you have more people watching streams of FIFA, of Tekken, of Street Fighter, of all these games. And then you create influencers, people who are going to speak for the community and who are going to find a way to engage and attract more people. I think that's definitely key, because that will make events more visible. That will make games made locally or international games more visible. And I think it's just going to help, increasing the amount of engagement that you have from users. I think that's definitely, for me, that will be a number one thing.
We've seen, like, especially during this COVID period, like people are coming through and saying, oh, I'm a gamer and, you know, this is my live stream. Is that what you mean? Or is there another way to push that?
Honestly, I think there's several steps. I think this is good because that creates kind of like a wave. You have more and more people that try doing it, that start to, to do it themselves. Of course, you won't be perfect, but then what you need is people that are a little bit more experienced or people who have done it, a while to start doing, helping those guys, raising their profile, raising the quality of the work that they're doing. So at least, they can move from level 1 to level 2, and level 2 is when they're going to start building a great audience. That's when they're going to start connecting with them. So I think it's an increasing process. A few people are far advanced in it, but they're in Japan, they're in the US, or they're in Europe. So people locally usually like these people, but they can't really connect to them as much because they don't feel like they can talk to them or interact with them on a regular basis. But if you start having people like that live in Kenya, and people that they see them, in events in Kenya, and they see them, tomorrow in Paris, and they see them tomorrow in the US, they'll be happy because they're like, yo, this is my boy, I know him. We were there last time, we connected, we took a picture together. So I think, it's going to create even more. I'll give you an example. I think last year, I think we had the Africa corner. We had 100 square meter place, so we're really happy, excited. We're like, yeah, this is Africa. We're there. We had a lot of people, but at some point, I saw the amount of people that I saw rushing from one place to another scared me. I was like, what's happening? It was just one influencer that was there for 5 minutes, but it made us look like this. Just one person. He was there and he was doing just a small show, doing his thing. And I think he was an influencer on Fortnite or something, but he's really, followed by a lot of people there. But it shows you how one individual who loves a game and who plays that game on a regular basis and who has become now an influencer is able to make people shift the way they interact, the way they connect. Maybe a lot of people that were there came at this event just because he was there. Maybe that's the only reason why they came. So I think, one day, hopefully we can get to that point. But, we need to build up, we need to have more audience. And I think, what Wallen was saying earlier is totally right. People love playing, but when it comes to looking at other people playing, it's like, no, I just rather play. But if you want to develop the ecosystem and you want people to watch you, you need to watch them play. You need to, spend time. You need to be here when there's an event. You need to, engage. You need to make sure that people understand, like as small as, sharing something on Twitter, on social media. This is small, you can do it, but by doing it, you're helping somebody else build up, and tomorrow maybe that person will help you build up as well. So I think, there's a few things we can do to get up there.
How about for you, Dennis? What are the gaps you can identify in your region?
I think I'd like to touch on two. One being consistency. Lack of consistency is really killing us. You'd see people coming into the esports space, whether it's a brand that's organizing esport tournaments, whether it's just an esport team. And I think, for lack of a better word, maybe it's cloud chasing or chasing the money. They come in, they try it for 6 months, it doesn't work, they're out of it, they're gone. So consistency is really key for us to grow this market, because also for the people who you're working with or you're working for, they want something that's long-term. As Siddiq said, you just don't get it and get out and go. You need to be very consistent in what it is that you're doing. It doesn't matter what capacity you're doing it at, but be consistent. Number two, I think one of the things that would really get the conversation moving along, and I know this is a long-term conversation, would be the intellectual property. Having IPs that are actually African-owned, that makes the conversation a lot more easier than having to go look for the AAA titles, which are a long distance away from here, having that discussion. And some people have already made their money. Right now, telling them to come to Africa, start looking at Africa, they're like, it's not grown, we can't monetize yet, it's going to take a long time to monetize, we've done this dance before. So we need to also get to a point where we have our own intellectual property, where we can have that conversation about, even if it's licensing, it's someone who's next door, we already have a rapport with, we already have the networks close by, we can have that discussion and roll out.
Okay, so if we had a good publisher in Kenya and we had a good relationship with them, do you think maybe having like a PSG run tournament would, call in the numbers, fill in that gap that Siddiq was talking about, in terms of, since this game is on there, it's a big game, you have the people there?
Well, it's not black and white as well. Just because you have the IP and you have the good networks, whatever it is that they're making has to have good traction on the ground. So if you have a good IP and it doesn't have traction, that still will not guarantee the numbers. So there's a lot of things that we need to look at. So the IP needs to have grown, it needs to have taken shape, it needs to be something that is popular with people. We also need to build that culture of going and supporting our own. I like what was said. We did a tournament last year, you were part of it, and we had to put in a contract. You're part of this, you need to come back and support your teammates. Even if you've been kicked out of the tournament, you need to come back and support them. So having that support structure will also go a long way in terms of helping us just grow the communities.
Yeah. How about Len?
It's actually sad that I can just respond. It's actually sad that you had to put that in the contract, Dennis. It's super sad, and that goes, hand in hand with what I was saying earlier on in terms of, the people that are directly impacted by this ecosystem. They need to naturally just, follow the event and be part of it and help grow.
So Len, for you, where do you identify the gaps? You've been there for a long time, and probably you've overcome more hurdles than anyone on here. Like, what were the gaps at the beginning, and what are the gaps now that you see that we're facing, other than obviously COVID?
For us, you speak about publishers and whatnot. Having local servers, and we spoke earlier on about, I can't remember if it was Sadiq or Dennis that was talking about improving the skill level of their players. And it's not just a local thing in his country, it's in South Africa, it's all over the world. But in Africa is, we don't have local servers, so we're connecting via whatever our internet connection is, whether that be a fiber connection or an edge connection, and some people are trying to connect with edge. So it's sad, but that's the reality. But having a local server will certainly go a long way. But the problem with that is that a publisher will only put a local server in play if the support is there and it's financially viable. So, and you can't guarantee that. Whether that be a very popular Call of Duty or a very popular Counter-Strike or a very, Quake. ID Software tried a number of years ago to have a local server, and they did something with Quake Live, but it lasted all of 8 months in South Africa. If you ask most seasoned esports players what their favorite games are, from a competitive level perspective, there's 2 games, and it'll be Quake or Unreal Tournament. I'm going to put them in the same basket for a moment, and then Counter-Strike. I'm just saying, old school, seasoned esports players, they're the go-to games. And it's just, to connect one guy with a 200 ping and another guy with a 60 ping is just, there's a thing now that I came across with Angola cables where if Valorant, the new game that's starting to gain a lot of traction, if you connect via an Angola cable fiber connection, you're from South Africa, your ping is well below 100, so, and that's really cool. So the talk is, I haven't tested it, but the talk is a 60 ping. Now 60 ping is not ideal. What is ideal? You ask any gamer what ideal is, and they'll tell you 0. But they want to sit on the server. But it's a 60 ping is a good competitively or a good playable ping. But to then connect with one guy on a Angola cable link and another which is through Vox Telecom in this country. So Vox connects to Angola cable, and then and I'm on Vox, so like I said, I haven't tested it yet, but I'm going to. But then the next guy that happens to be with a different provider, now he or she is connecting with a 200 ping, and we're on the same server. It's not cool. So that's for me, I'd love to see local servers and everything on the cloud that is controlled, whether that be by Microsoft with their cloud servers in each territory. I don't know what the solution is with that, but ping is a big gap that needs to be addressed.
We've talked about all the gaps that we need to fill. How do you think that we can fill these gaps?
Supporting Africa. I'm a white guy, and I'll speak to a black kid in Soweto, and I listen to him speak, and I want to say to him or her, "You sound American."
Mm-hmm.
And it just it's sad, you know. So it's like we don't trust our own region. So I don't know, you know, if there is an answer to that. But that's a huge geopolitical question, and it's how long is a piece of string. But you know, I love what has come out of some of the answers so far from Sadiq and Dennis, and you know, in terms of the for me the biggest standout is views. And I wanted to interrupt Dennis and ask him how many people will watch like a final, the stream on. I'm talking about an online stream of a final event that's giving winners a seriously good prize. So yeah, for an example, if you had to give away R1 million, how many people would watch that stream?
Ooh. We've given away 1 million Kenya shillings, and I think our stream had about 3,500 people watching. And this was including the people who flew in from the Zambians who came in, the Ugandans, the Tanzanians. That boggles my mind completely, because you'd find the same kind of people who understand esports. They know about PewDiePie, they know about the Fnatic team, they know about all these people, and they tune in to watch. But when it's a locally produced tournament or broadcast, the numbers just dwindle completely. It's totally mind-boggling.
Sad.
One small thing to add on top of this. I think it was in between 2017 and 2018 at one of our events, when we did the stream ourselves, we advertised a lot, we did a lot of things, and I think, you know, for the final we had maybe 100,000 views, and that was all over. That was not even concurrent. But there was one year when we had a technical team come in to help us from France, and one of the guys that helped us asked his friend, who is an influencer, to host the channel on Twitch. We had 8,000 people concurrent viewers. We did more than 30,000 views over that time. So, you know, that was just to emphasize on the fact that I was saying earlier is we need influencers because they could change the whole game. And I think, you know, I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, you are spot on, Sadiq. You are spot on. The influencer is definitely the right move. So we gave away R1 million in a Counter-Strike tournament, and the online stream had less than 500 views. Less than 500 views. Okay. Now, how do you go back to that sponsor with that kind of view? Yeah. Fortunately, there was a live event, and you know there were other factors that added to the ROI. But ultimately, we need to build the viewership, right? So. I mentioned earlier on about me holding up a phone and streaming that to Facebook Live, and we had 74,000 something views. And we didn't have an influencer per se, but the influencer was actually Kaizer Chiefs. Because Kaizer Chiefs, the soccer team, has such a massive following, everybody started talking about the fact that, oh, it's a Kaizer Chiefs esports thing. So you don't need a specific individual, and therein perhaps lies the importance of bringing that big brand like a Coca-Cola. And it might not be a Coca-Cola, it might, because Coca-Cola, the association between Coca-Cola and a sport is not really there. Whether that be an esports or a real world sport, I think there needs to be that link. So, you know, whatever that sponsor is in your country that is actively involved in cricket or rugby or soccer or so I should say football, sorry, or whatever, you know, they are probably the best brands to start, because they might have a following of a couple of million people, and the minute they announce that they are doing something, or they're involved with the stream and they are giving away a trip to France as an example, or $1 million rand or whatever that may be, that might change things. And you don't need an influencer, because the sponsor could potentially be that influencer. But yeah, it's the amount of eyeballs, and that's why I said repeatedly now, I love what has come out of this, because you guys are spot on. Everything revolves around the ROI. Everything revolves around what you're promising a sponsor, because I can promise you right now, you might have a spectacular event, but because of one or two small balls that you've dropped, that sponsor is not coming back.
From each of you, can you give me like a 20-second wrap up of what you'd like Africa to know? And also, just tell me about your gamer tag.
So my gamer tag is free, FR33. I've changed the E's to 3s. It was given to me because I always am involved in editing and hardware editing and writing articles and whatnot. So my friends always used to hate the fact that I got so many cool free things. Yeah, so it became a bit of a diss, but it landed up being something I still have. And I was the first FR33 to register on Steam.
So the gamer tag is very new. It's very different. It's been changing over the last couple of months. The new one is defeats. Largely because you play against me, that's what you're getting, or that's what I'm getting. I love video games, man. Defeat is a gamer tag. Parting shot is, you have to keep the fire burning. You have to keep the faith going. We're the only ones who are going to get ourselves out of this situation. We can't wait for the big boys to come and start trying to invest in this continent. We're here. We're whole. We have our capabilities set. The only thing we need to keep doing is keep grinding, keep pushing, keep knocking on doors. I know we'll get a lot of no's, but we still have to keep pushing. You know, the one thing that we don't look at when you talk about technology is we look at technology right now and say, you know, it's bad, we demonize it. I mean, I'm not saying technology is all good. There's good and bad of it. But if this is the amount of technology we're living with right now, what's going to happen when our kids are alive? What's going to happen when our kids are alive? Technology is going to be ingrained in our DNA so hard, we cannot avoid it. So at this fundamental level, we just need to start laying down the groundwork, making sure that everything that needs to be looked at, whether it's legislation, regulation, needs to be set for the next generation. This is not for me. This is not for us. I keep telling my team that it's for the next generation. That's it for me.
Thank you, Dennis.
Definitely. Definitely. I totally agree. And I think, you know, for me, one keyword, collaboration. I think, you know, that will help us, you know, get stronger if we are united, if everybody's doing things at the same time. You know, one people is doing it here, and then you get support from the other country, and then the other country is doing it. I think that will help us build a stronger local group of guys who are, you know, really supporting the ecosystem and helping it develop. I think for me, that's going to be the game changer. And I think we need to continue, you know, pushing. We need to continue investing in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of energy, in terms of sweat, in terms of blood. I think, you know, we need to keep going at it. And I think at some point, you know, we'll get there. And I'll be more than happy to see how things are going to evolve. And I'm really happy to see all these guys that play at a competitive level now, and that, you know, that won $1, $2, $3, $10,000, and who hope tomorrow to start winning 100,000. And if we can be there and help get to that level, we'll be more than happy, and it will be an honor. And hopefully we'll be there.
Awesome. And what's your gamer tag, Sadiq?
S Bakayoko.
Oh, come on! You must have a better one than that.
The hidden one is funky, FNKY23. That's the hidden one, you know. Now, you know, that used to be the old school name, but now, you know, you know, I think I've changed. I used to be a lot into Street Fighter. I play a lot of CS:GO. Now I'm more of an Assassin's Creed. You know, when I play with my daughters, I play a lot of Street Fighter because my oldest daughter is really into it. But then I switch more into Assassin's Creed now.
Awesome. That's awesome to hear. My gamer tag is Ghetto Bobby. And I'm signing out of COM-eCON and thanking each and every one of you for joining us today. And thank you to our panelists for doing this for us. It's absolutely been an eye-opener. I absolutely love the talk that we had today. And we hope to collaborate. We hope to do the things that we've been asked to do and to apply them well into our organizations. And if you're thinking about, starting an organization, this is a good place to start. Again, it's not, we have a money tree at the back of your yard where we can pluck, but it takes a lot of hard work, sweat, and tears. All right, guys, I'm signing out. Penny, aka Get a Wabi. Thank you, guys.